So greetings, Matt. Thank you so much for participating in our SETSI YouTube sessions that we do. We have a lot of traction on our YouTube channel. A lot of people have been inspired. They learned a lot. And, we're so honored to have people like you that are, putting that footprint in and making a difference in community globally, locally. It doesn't matter. We're all pieces of a global puzzle. So thank you so much for participating.
Pleasure to be here, Mahat.
All right. So as we always do our acknowledgement. So we begin all things by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands that we are on. We acknowledge our ancestors. We acknowledge all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So please, if you can do us the honors, Matt, by introducing yourself to our listeners and viewers and tell us about your remarkable work.
Thanks, Matt. So my name's Matt Pfahlert. I'm the co-founder and CEO of an Australian-based not-for-profit social enterprise organisation called ACRE. And ACRE stands for the Australian Centre for Rural Entrepreneurship. We are headquartered in a rural location. So I'm based in a small town called Beechworth, which is about 3.5 hours northeast of Melbourne in the southern state of Victoria in Australia. And I live in a small town called Beechworth that only has 4,000 people. And the work that we do is all about driving the renewal of Australia's rural communities so that future generations can thrive. The unique situation we have in this country is that there's been a 50-year concentration of resources to the cities or the large regional centres. And that's come at the cost of many of our more rural and remote communities on every measure. So whether that's employment, health, well-being, career, education, every indicator. If you're more than about a half an hour drive away from one of these large regional centres, it's kind of like falling off a cliff in our country. And so that's our focus. It's a focus on unlocking the power of entrepreneurship through a local lens at a place-based community level, where we are unlocking entrepreneurship and social enterprise to either solve a local issue or create a new opportunity. So that's kind of in a kind of a nutshell what we're here to do.
Okay, amazing. That's amazing. And could you articulate your personal mission and vision for us?
Oh, well, my personal mission and vision relates to the organisation, really, because I'm that kind of person who was never a very good employee. So I was always too philosophically driven or idealistically driven, if you like. So for me, growing up as a rural Australian, it is that idea that young people have that opportunity to see themselves, and the way I describe it in the work that we do is moving from a mindset of seeing themselves as a job seeker to seeing themselves as a job creator. So that idea that if you can find what you're really good at and combine it with what you really love, and you can make a career out of it, then that's your sort of destiny. And we all should have that opportunity to live what's closer to our destiny than currently what we've been told, and currently what our education system wants to indoctrinate us around. They want us to be a well-rounded, compliant sort of employee, and I've never kind of bought that, from a very, very early age. And so, but I will say that I've been, as I get older, and I'm in that kind of mature area of my career where people are expecting me to show leadership a way more. My challenge is to move from an activist mindset into an advocate mindset, so that I can be, more influential and powerful at advocating for the next generation.
Perfect. I love how you said, you're idealistically driven. and from job seeker to job creator, because it's so perfect, perfect timing, because that's the flow of the new generation now. They don't want to be employees anymore. They actually want to control their own destiny and to be able to do, like you said, do their passion and what they were meant to do and felt like they were meant to do. So right on time. And what inspires you? What inspires you about your current work?
I was one of those young people that didn't fit into the traditional education system. So I grew up in a very, very small town. There was only 200 people when I was about to go to my first years of school. We call it primary school here in Australia. And instead of going to primary school age 5 or 6, there wasn't enough students to maintain the 2 teachers in the school at the time. So a number of the parents of 4-year-old children were asked if their children could make up the numbers. And I was one of those kids. So I went to school when I was still 4, which was pretty young for the time, and it's actually kind of outlawed now. But within a few weeks, the teachers had sort of already pigeonholed me as having an intellectual disability. And so, like good communities did in the day, that means just the community wraps around kids who are a bit slow or a bit, they're not going to quite make it. You know what I mean? And so I wasn't really required to be in the classroom. I would help the maintenance man do jobs around the school. I would run errands down the street for the school, and generally try to be a bit pretty helpful. And what I noticed about that is that what I saw was that the only people that were really valued were the academic learners. And I realized that from a really early age, because I was kind of I was coming in and out of the classroom. I was just I was a curious kind of spectator of life, it felt. And it wasn't until I used that kind of curiosity and went to the larger sort of feeder high school. So I was about 13 by this stage. I realised that none of the farm kids who were coming in from all of the outlying regional areas had access to chewing gum, chips, or lollies. Well, we call them lollies. You might call them candy. And so I'm going, wow, I'm from this little town. I've got to pass the shop on the way to school. I could be their supplier. And I started my first business when I was 13, and I was making a lot of money selling these things to these farm kids who had no access. And by the time I was kind of the end of that first year of high school, age 13, I felt like I knew the rules of life. I felt like if you can become a trader, if you understand that someone wants something and you can supply it and you can be reliable and you don't rip people off and all of these things, I already understood that I was going to be okay in life. That no matter what I did, I'll be able to find a way to nourish myself and meet my basic survival needs. And so I felt like, well, I didn't understand it at the time, but as I grew older, I realized the importance of that agency, as seeing yourself as self-determining your future. And yet there was nothing about trading. There was nothing about entrepreneurship. There was nothing that valued that kind of understanding or mindset at any time in my school career. So, I felt like we spiritually starve our children in terms of our education system. And fighting an education system is really difficult in any country. But actually finding viable alternatives to inspire others to join a different way is where I get a huge amount of inspiration from my personal and early years, but now feeling like I'm at an age where I can be a real bridge maker between the generation that came before, who still holds all the power, and the next generation who are wanting to assume power and leadership, but they don't actually understand some of the cultural nuances of how to negotiate that. So that sort of role has given me huge motivation to get out of bed every morning.
Amazing. Wow. That is so inspirational because I mean, we're coming from an era back in the day where everything was so cookie cutter to now where it's like you're so free, like your wings can spread, So for you to have that mindset, it's mind-blowing. That's so amazing. So I definitely will, let the young people know that take a page out of your book to think, in that quick manner to say, here, I can provide a service to people that are miles away that don't have access to these things at such a young age. And, young people nowadays, they're actually already on that trajectory. So it's amazing that you're able to keep that going, keep that inspiration going to make them entrepreneurs. Yes, very good, very good. And what challenges and barriers do you face in what you do, and how do you work to overcome it?
So there's two main challenges. One happens at that community level that these young people are living in, and the other is access to capital. So it is the ability to start these sort of businesses. It is the ability to get a social enterprise off the ground. It is ability for community to even understand that there is a third way between. There are really great charitable organisations that do incredible work that are so needed in our society. So I'm not trying to take anything away from them. And equally, there are incredible businesses that play a role in providing goods or services. So it's not about attacking one or the other, but it's actually where there's this kind of beautiful meeting in the middle piece. The business model of social enterprise, where you're still trading. You're being profitable, but you're not putting personal profits ahead of people on the planet. And I think it's a beautiful kind of bringing together of what the next generation seek in how they understand themselves in relation to the complex issues the world faces. So it just kind of makes sense. But to people who are from a sort of a more traditional mindset, they've grown up in these rural locations. They've had an incredibly privileged life. They've been able to have this kind of stability and security, of a generation that we'll never ever see again. And so they don't want anything to change. They're actually really happy. They're sort of entering their retirement age, and they're volunteering here, there, and everywhere as a sort of semi-retired person. And they might not actively fight change, but they don't see the need for them to be leading this stuff. And I see them as a huge barrier in these communities, because they're not actually fostering the local ecosystem required. They're not fostering the development of emerging leadership and talent. And so it's really hard as a young person trying to do this stuff if you don't have role models, if you don't have support, if you don't have an active and supportive little ecosystem around you. And we actually have a term for them. They're called the cave people, and they're in every rural community around the world. And CAVE stands for the Citizens Against Virtually Everything. And and everyone can think of 4 or 5 of these people. And they're actually, we need to start encouraging them and calling them out to say, hey, you've had your turn. Look, we think you're wonderful, but step aside. And let the next generation take on, the responsibility and the opportunity. We know with entrepreneurial behaviour, the failures are the sometimes the best lessons to realising success. And so if you don't have any places where young people can feel safe to experiment, try things, build things, fail, get up back on the horse and go again, we're not going to build that sort of ability, that collaborative ability at a community level for people to solve their own issues or create new opportunities.
Well, I wrote that down. Cave people. I love that. Citizens against virtually everything.
Everything.
I definitely know a few of them for sure.
Well,
Thank you for that one.
I think one of the things that we find that, people can have an amazing business plan, they can have the best team around them and all that kind of stuff, but in a local community, they're totally unaware of the forces against them that sit in some of the current leadership. And so it's actually can sort of unlock sometimes the strategy that needs to be employed for your social entrepreneurial activities to actually succeed. So here you are thinking, I've got everything sorted, the business model, I've got this, I've got all that happening, but actually it's outside forces that are largely unseen.
Absolutely. That's a very important point that you made. And for everyone listening, watching, please, really get that in, because sometimes you might think, is it me? Like, am I doing something wrong? But not knowing it's outside forces that are actually throwing you off course. So be mindful of that. Thank you for that. And how do you feel about the future of social enterprise? Now, I'm in Canada, you're in Australia, but globally, like in general, how do you feel about it, the future of it?
I think so. I'm a convert. So I started my first social enterprise in 1996, and I've been running social enterprises ever since. They weren't called social enterprises back there, but that's what I now understand them to be. And I've been sort of active in trying to build out the social entrepreneurship ecosystem here in Australia. And one of the ways that I've been doing that is by understanding the social innovations that surround this sort of area from countries like Canada and Scotland in particular. So a couple of our key partnerships in delivering social entrepreneurial activities, particularly around learning and development here in this country, come from partnerships like Common Good Solutions. They're a social enterprise development agency out of Halifax, and organisations like Social Enterprise Academy out of Scotland. And so what I've been able to see is this maturing of social enterprise as a concept over many years since I really started investigating it in the Northern Hemisphere in about 2013. And why I think it has the potential to be this genuine global movement, which I believe it's starting to become, and that next generation engaging with it will only confirm that, is because it's a doing activity. So if you want me to engage with the next economy or the whatever kind of next thing, I don't know what that actually means. But I can eyeball a 7-year-old child and say, if you care about something enough and you want to take a sustainable approach to it, you could start a social enterprise tomorrow. So it's a doing activity. And look, in our country, we have 43 universities. Like we are well sorted when it comes to theoretical learning, right? But when it comes to doing something, we're all at sea. We don't have doing institutes. We don't have action learning centers. We don't have any of this sort of stuff. So that's why I love social enterprise. It's a thing. It's something that you can inspire someone to start and learn about. And by the very nature of what they're doing, they are putting planet and people before personal profits.
Exactly. Doing activity. I love that. I love that phrase because, wow, 43 universities. My God, I don't even know how much Canada has. I have to Google that. or do I have to chat GPT? One of, myself, I'm trying to get up to date, Wow, that's huge. Okay, and what is your ultimate goal and what does success look like to you?
Success for us looks like starting a social enterprise in a rural community, being part of a social enterprise in a rural community, taking a social enterprise or entrepreneurial mindset to a problem in your local community in the future becomes utterly unremarkable. It's just what we do. And if we've got a problem that we're trying to solve, that's important to our community or people within the community, if we've got an opportunity that we see on the horizon, we're thinking about it naturally through a social entrepreneurship lens. And I would love to think that my children, in 30 years' time, are living in a world where that's how communities operate. And there is and why I think it's really possible is that rural people already live interdependent lives. You can't live in a rural community without sort of playing some kind of role other than your job in supporting things that happen, whether they're cultural activities or sporting activities or educational activities. We all lead interdependent lives. But what we haven't had is that entrepreneurial mindset, entrepreneurial skills, and entrepreneurial behaviors, making this kind of activity just what we do. And that's what success looks like for me.
Yeah, it's just what we do. It should be just a cultural norm, something that is just automatic. Yeah, I agree.
And I think there's a component to this, which is, that's just what we do. In our country, we've got 60,000 years of experience. If only we were smart enough to sit down and listen for a second to what our Indigenous peoples have been doing forever. You know what I mean? But we are so arrogant and we are so blinkered in our sort of Western views of the world that we've got this idea, we've got these incredibly gifted and generous people ready to support this journey, and that's once again the mindset shift we require as well.
That's it. Sometimes, when you go back and you see the Indigenous and how they did it, it's like, well, hold on. That is social enterprise. That is, it's automatic, right?
I feel embarrassed using the term around Indigenous people in my country because guess what? Yeah, that's what we do. That's it. It's just what we do,
Exactly. Oh, Matt, wonderful. So last question. Do you have any closing thoughts or calls to action at this time?
I think it is. There's when you talked about where's kind of social enterprise going, or I think there's an opportunity for us to genuinely start to look at, and this has been enabled by technology and the fact that we can be on this call and be 16,000 kilometers away from each other, but the thing that I'm looking for at a global level is that we can have a young person wanting to do something, trying to solve a local issue in our community, and the role models aren't there yet that are local. The role models are actually probably in Halifax or they're in Newfoundland, or they're in Alaska, or they're in the Highlands and Isles of Scotland, because they're the people who have already been on the journey for longer than us. And so how do we actually create this impact network, if you like, that is truly global, so that when someone has a challenge or an opportunity they're trying to tackle, you can put a team of people around them, a kind of a coaching team, if you like, of who's already done this, who's already been on the journey, who's got experience of this. And I think to accelerate each other's practice around building these mindsets and skills and behaviors, I think we can't do it without actually taking a global perspective to it. Because I know my mentors, I've had to travel the other side of the world to find and drag them into my worldview and drag them into supporting me to do what I do. So it's the same principle, but I think it's what we need to start doing in a more organised way for all countries who have rural people, because there's so many universals to what we're talking about here. There is so much concentration of resources back to the cities in nearly every country in the world. And so imagine imagine if we all were able to help each other in kind of bringing in these teams around a particular challenge or opportunity, you know, at the right time, you know, because that's what people need right then.
Yeah, I love it. I'm already imagining it into my head, like an impact network where everybody, you know, is just a Zoom away, you know, a Teams away, just to really tap in, get that support, you know. Some people in the middle of, you know, trying to build their entrepreneurship journey and they need a little help. They know they can tap right in somewhere, anywhere in the world and get that inspiration. So,
Yeah.
oh man, that would be a beautiful thing. And I'm putting it out there. It's gonna manifest for sure.
Good on you.
Oh, Matt, this has been a wonderful interview. I really appreciate it. On behalf of SETSI, we appreciate you. Thank you for all that you're doing and inspiring young people to continue the journey of entrepreneurship, getting out of the employee mindset, getting into, you know, being non-employed. What did they say? I'm unemployable. That's the new word now. I'm unemployable. So thank you once again for this incredible interview. And we will end the way that we began by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands that we are on. We acknowledge our ancestors. We acknowledge all those who toil without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we live, share, learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So once again, Matt, I really appreciate you. On behalf of SETSI, we thank you very, very much.
Pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, all the best to you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.